Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to Radio.W.O.R.K.S World. I'm your genius farmer host, and I'm broadcasting from a village called Holmes Chapel in Cheshire. I'm actually on Brookbank Farm at the moment. And my name's Daniel Bennett, and today I want to share my story with you. Now, you can always connect with me if you want to learn more, or if I can help or serve you in any way. Possibly the best way to do that is to check out my personal website. That's daniel-bennett.uk. There's no co or there's no com, so it's daniel-bennett.uk. So what I'd like to share with you today is my story and how that story has evolved into what I do with people, my clients, my customers, and I'm hoping that you're going to get great value out of this. So I believe that your most valuable asset is your brand, and it's that brand which will help you build your business. It's going to help you create your sales and marketing funnels. It's going to bring you more work in. It's going to bring you better cash flow, and it's going to bring you more profit in. And the British Design Council's research has shown that actually, when design is used appropriately in brand building, you can see a 400% return on investment. That's for every pound or dollar or euro that you put into your brand, you're going to see 4 back. There aren't many other investments that can perform in that way. So I believe your brand is your biggest asset, and it's about putting money in your till. And your brand's not about now, your brand's about your future. Your brand is your foundations for your future. And what I'd like you to do is think about, what do you want your future world to look like? Look, before I go any further, I just really want to say thank you to Marina to allow me to do this. And more importantly, to thank you guys for listening in, because time's precious. You could be doing a whole host of other things, whether that's working or spending time with your family, doing something you love doing. So I'm going to really try and give you some great stuff to take away from today. Now, I'm a branding expert. You're probably wondering, what rights have I got to make that claim? Well, there's a couple of things which might help you realize where I come from. I've been in the branding world for over 25 years, in fact, 26 years this year. And to give you an example of the sort of stuff that we do, in the village of Hawkshead, beautiful village in the Lake District in the United Kingdom, Mark and Maria had a cafe which was struggling to find customers. So they thought, how could they add value to their business? And they had a passion for herbs and spices and food. So they started to make some chutneys and relishes. And now Hawkshead Relish is a £1.2 million turnover business. Now, what I love most about this business is, if you think, for those of you in the UK, you'll be familiar with Branston pickle. For those of you maybe not in the UK, I don't know if you have Branston pickle, but in this country we can buy a jar of Branston pickle for £1, and you put that on your cheese sandwich, and it enhances your cheese sandwich. Or you can buy a jar of Westmoreland chutney from Hawkshead Relish, and that costs £3.50. And when you put that on your sandwich, it also enhances it. So why would people pay £3.50 compared to £1 for a product which is seemingly, or delivers the same benefit? And I think that's all down to Mark and Maria's story, their values, their passion. And when you put that all together, that's their brand. Likewise, a company called James Cropper make specialist papers and boards. And for example, if you buy a bottle of Yves Saint Laurent perfume or Chanel, there's a reasonable chance that when you buy that, the packaging is made, the card is made by James Cropper. And of course, we all know that the cost of the liquid in the bottle of perfume is often not very much. It's all about the packaging. It's all about the perceived benefit. It's all about how it makes you feel as the wearer of that perfume. and working with that business, we've seen their revenues grow from £40 million a year to £80 million a year. Now, I've not always been a brand consultant. Actually, I suppose people say I shouldn't use the word hate, and but it's the only word I can think of to describe my feelings towards my school years. I really did hate school. I couldn't wait to get out of there. I went to a very good grammar school in Buckinghamshire, where I grew up, but I was like a fish out of water. All I wanted to do, and any chance I had at the weekends or during the holidays, was to get on the farm. And if I was really lucky, I was allowed to drive the tractors. And ever since, I've had this passion for big tractors. And if you see them big green ones going up and down the roads, that's the sort of thing I used to operate. And I still have a real love for it. Now, I sort of can probably detect that you're thinking, hang on a sec, farmer, brand consultant, how in the heck does that work? Well, I will share it with you, but just a bit later on. So what I've actually done is, because I'm so passionate about branding, I thought I would try and make it easier for people to actually work on their own brand and build their own brand. And so I created a blueprint to building your most valuable asset. So to increase your sales, the cash flow to your business, and the profits. And I'll be talking about that during this next sort of 30 minutes or so. Now, I believe your brand is your promise. Your brand is the statement that you're making to your audience, to your customers, what it is you will deliver. Break that promise at your peril. You need to be in control of your brand. How many of you have ever Googled yourselves? And when you Google yourself, what have you found? And it's likely you'll come across one of three things. The first thing is that you might find something you like. Secondly, you might find something you don't like. And probably worst of all, you might not find anything at all. So you need to be in control of your brand. You need to actually choose what's out there. Now, of course, if you choose to put yourself out there, particularly online, you have to expect other people to contribute, because that's what you want. So you're not always in control, but what you have to do is really be consistent and make sure that your brand is your promise. Now, I really believe in authenticity. I think that building your brand should be based on truth. It's not about making up fibs and lies. And just slightly controversially, corporate businesses often sort of think, well, what should we make our values this year? In smaller businesses, those values are usually those of the founder and the people that work in the business. So it's genuine, it's authentic. Now, whilst that really matters, what matters most is what other people believe, because their belief is everything. That determines how people react to you and engage with you. And so perceptions are reality. And maybe you should think about how you think you are perceived by your audience. How would you like to be perceived by your audience? And the one that you can't answer for yourself is how you are perceived by your audience. Take control of your brand. Now, there's probably a few marketing people listening into this. So again, at risk of upsetting a few of you, people often say to me, Dan, what's the difference between branding and marketing? Well, firstly, to me, I talk about brand sort of similar to an iceberg. Your brand is an iceberg. And underneath the water is everything that makes up your brand. Your story, your message, your values, your value to your customers. And above the waterline is your branding. That's what everybody sees out there. So what about marketing? Well, I think marketing is more about manipulation. And I think brand's about influence. Now, I'm not saying that marketing's not got a role in business. Of course it has. It's very important. But your brand is that genuine, authentic thing, where it's marketing and attracting people to you. You want people to beat a path to your door, whereas marketing is more like herding. So maybe your magnet's attraction, is an attraction, whereas marketing is giving them a push to come to you. And I like being an influencer more than I like being a manipulator. Now, what influence, of course, in building a brand is hugely important. And how do we define influence? Well, I think of it as leading someone to do what you want them to do, whilst they believe that it was their decision in the first place, and yet they thank you for it too. Now, Robert Cialdini, a well-known intellect, he put together the 6 laws of influence. And those laws were firstly starting with liking other people. How can you be influential if you don't like other people? Reciprocity. That's the act of feeling compelled to give back if you receive something. So if you want to be influential, give to people. Now, actually, I go a little bit further than Robert Cialdini, because if you give to people with expectation of it coming back, then maybe that's not quite so genuine. So I would say give generously, give without condition, and give without expectation, and the world will work for you. You also need to have commitment and consistency. Doing what you say you do. Consistency is doing those seemingly small and significant actions on a daily or weekly basis. And when they're compounded over time, that's what brings big results. So if you want to be influential, you need social proof. It's not what you say about yourself, it's about what others say about you. And authority. You need a position of authority to be influential. And that's part of the reason I do this radio show, is because it's about positioning as authority and brand building. Public speaking. Really, anybody in business should be speaking from a stage. And then the last law, last of Robert Cialdini's laws, is scarcity. Think about, again, those of you not listening, in the UK, one of our delights we have is fish and chip shops. And sometimes you can see 2 fish and chip shops next door to each other. If one's got a queue out the door and round the corner and the other one's got, which shop do you feel compelled to go to? Well, most of us would queue, because there's a perception that get it immediately because other people want it. It must be best. So that's creating scarcity, and scarcity creates desire. And if you want to be influential, you want people to desire contact with you. And then we need to think about who your audience is. What does your audience look like? Could you draw an avatar of them? What do they value? Now, in business, I would suggest that it would be good if your audience are either made up of ambitious people or affluent people. Of course, it could be a combination. Any of you who've tried to run a business for people without money, I think it's a very difficult business model to make succeed. The ambitious, even if they haven't got money, tend to make things happen. So branding's at its most effective when your preferred audience is either ambitious people or affluent people. So just have a little think about what it is that, what values the ambitious hold. Well, firstly, they don't buy on price. Price is not their deciding factor. W.O.R.K.S said relish, for example. This audience are different. It's so important that we understand what's important to each of them to serve them best. They buy what they want rather than what they need. People buy with their emotions. Quite often, though, of course, we buy with our emotions, and then we set about justifying it logically to ourselves or to our nearest and dearest. But we buy with our emotions. Above all else, the ambitious value their time. And if you can actually serve the affluent by letting them use their time for their highest value, whether that's work or spending time with their family or going on their holidays, you're going to have a customer for life. And of course, the ambitious care about their image. They care about how people perceive them. But right at the heart of your relationship with the ambitious and the affluent is trust. Because without trust, there's no real relationship. So think about how you can actually serve the ambitious and affluent around those sort of factors. Now, so what does your brand consist of? Well, we spend a lot of time working with people, working out what their brand is. So we get to know people, get right under their skin. We have great fun doing it. I really enjoy this part of the work, and it gets very emotional as well, because we're actually, most of us are very emotional about our businesses. So what we want to understand is what are your values? What's the most important things to you? That might be your family. That might be wealth creation. There's a whole host of things. But what we do is we work with you to work out those values. What's your story? Because we all like a story. Stories are a great way of delivering content and information. It makes it engaging. It makes it fun. And stories provide analogies which we can understand. So we want to know what your story is, because people will buy into your story. What's your unique message? Of course, when you ask many people, they'll say, well, service, delivery and price, or quality, but that's not enough. That is not enough. What we've got to work out is what makes you special, what differentiates you. If you're in a crowded room, what makes you stand out in your niche? We need to then work out who your audience is. Let's draw a picture of that, your audience. Sorry, you might hear a vehicle in the background. I am on a farm after all, so the vehicle's moving around. Your brand's your focus. So we want to really understand where you're going to spend your time, where you're going to put your efforts, where you're going to invest in. And then, of course, what we really have to work out is what is your value to your audience, to your customers? What's in it for them? Why should they care? So uncovering that information is the bit beneath the waterline, your iceberg beneath the waterline. And of course, then we get onto the actual branding. Now, of course, many of you might know that the word branding comes from the Wild West. So this is where cowboys used to herd the cattle. Now, the cattle in the herd were made up of, were owned by many farmers. So, of course, they used to get a hot iron and press that on the rump end of the beast to distinguish it, to identify who owned it. Now, there was actually one farmer who refused to brand his cattle, and his name was Maverick. And so whenever the cowboys found an unbranded animal, they called it a maverick. And of course, that's a term we now use day in, day out. Now, actually being a maverick in building your business isn't such a bad thing. Now, you don't have to be, you can choose the degree to which you're a maverick. At one end of the scale, you could be totally disruptive. At the other end of the scale, find your niche. What is it you do? What is it that you do really, really well? So with your brand, we then look at the branding tools. So typically, the type of thing that you might want to consider, how to deliver your unique message to your chosen audience, and the type of thing that we do day in, day out is, what's your business name? What's your product name? You see, of course, most people, when they think about branding, they immediately think of a logo. Now, of course, a logo is a very important part of your brand, but it's not the first part of your brand. You've got to work out what your brand is first. What's your business name? Maybe we should write your elevator pitch. If you don't know what an elevator pitch is, imagine meeting Sir Richard Branson at the bottom of a lift in the hotel, and you get in the lift together, and he might say to you, "Tell me what you do," and you've got about 20 to 30 seconds to explain what value you deliver. And so we call that an elevator pitch. So have an elevator pitch. We write those for people, and from an elevator pitch, we can often extract a strapline or a tagline. And those taglines, of course, you can't tell the complete message, 3, 5, 7 words, however many it is. But what it does is it provides a hook for your message to hang on. Other branding tools, of course, websites, very important these days, very powerful to deliver your unique message to your chosen audience. So make sure your website's alive and living. It doesn't want to just be flat. It needs to change. It needs to grow. It needs to develop. You need to think about the user experience. How many times have you been on a website and you can't find what you want to find very quickly, so you go off and go to another one? Well, you've lost an opportunity there. So actually, the website's not just about how it looks, of course, though how it looks is very, very important, because it's got to look attractive and appealing to your chosen audience. But it's about how it operates as well. And of course, from a website, you might be collecting contact details, building your database. You might also be going to networking meetings and events and collecting business cards. So you're going to build your database. So one of your branding tools is your database, and maybe you use a customer relationship management piece of software to manage those contacts. How do you use email? Of course, I think we've all experienced email overload. So think about how your email could be different and how it can give value to your audience. Business cards. Of course, we all need a business card. We need something to leave with people. And actually the use of print. Print's not as sexy as it used to be, but actually if you're dealing with an affluent audience who you're asking to invest thousands of pounds with you, actually print is a very tangible thing that reinforces a high value message. So don't exclude print. And of course, social media. social media is huge. My understanding is that something like 20% of the world's population has a Facebook account, and the Chinese don't allow Facebook. So that means it's a huge, huge proportion of the population have access to Facebook. No other anywhere close. You need to be on Facebook. You need to be in command of Facebook. And of course, there are other platforms. Maybe LinkedIn is very appropriate for your business. Instagram, you know, you need to explore which ones work for you. And there's the chances are you need several of them. But then right at the heart is yourself. You've got to place yourself at the heart of your brand. Certainly initially when you're starting your business, people are going to buy into you. The challenge, of course, is as you grow your business, you might then want to remove yourself from the day-to-day business element. You might be preparing the business for sale. So actually then what you've got to do is make sure you build a business brand which is separate from you. And of course, something that makes me chuckle a little bit when we talk about you being at the center of your brand is some of the photographs I often see or we see of people in a professional scenario. Please make sure that you're using professional photographs for your, well, for everything you do, but on your social media, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. Now, everyone's a bit of a branding consultant, aren't they? And of course, we've got options when you actually when you create your brand, and we could do DIY, and of course, we know that stands for do it yourself. Or we can actually do DWH. Maybe you're you're at a stage in your business where you really haven't got sufficient cash to invest in building a really rocking brand. So actually DWH, done with help, you could find support, someone to help you through the process, but you're doing most of the work. Or of course there's the affluence choice, because the affluent appreciate that their highest value is somewhere else. So they need someone who's expert to build their brand for them. And that's DFY, done for you. And just be a little bit careful. Actually, just think about the consequences of anything that you put out there. Just test it a little bit. Test to make sure you've not made any glaring mistakes. Now, I suppose we can't talk about branding without talking about Apple. Have a think about. Do you own any Apple products? Of course, Apple's quite a love-hate type of business. My understanding is, and I am open to argument on this, around about 20% of laptop sales are MacBooks. When you think about, you can go and buy your Dell, your HP, your Samsung, Toshiba, whatever make of PC that you want for £400 or £500, or you could go and buy your MacBook Pro for £1,200. Why would anybody pay 2 to 3 or sometimes 4 times as much for a piece of kit which seemingly does the same job? It's a bit like the Hawks Head relish thing. Branston pickle will enhance your cheese sandwich. So will Westbourne chutney. Why will people pay the difference? And of course, Apple are absolutely experts at this, because they're not actually selling computers. They're selling an extension to you as an individual. I think you'll find that most people on a MacBook Pro love their computer. And that is where Apple have got so much emotional engagement with their audience. And that's how they're able to charge massive premiums. Another little story that tickles me is how great design can impact on creating for your business. There's a chap called Justin Ginac. Sounds a bit French, but actually he was an American. And he was a art and design student. And he got into a discussion with an engineer, I believe in a bar. I might have just made that up, but I was led to believe it was in a bar. And the engineering student was really sort of saying, well, art and design and packaging really has no real value to add to a good product, and or to any product. And it's rattled Justin a bit. So actually he wanted to prove that wrong. So actually Justin went out into Times Square, where apparently, and I've not been, apparently you'll find garbage. And he gathered up some garbage, and he designed some plastic transparent boxes, and he put this garbage in the boxes. And he now, if you go on to nycgarbage.com, you can now go and buy new garbage. I think the cheapest product is $50. They do some special limited editions as well if you want to spend a bit more. And actually, from what I can understand, he sold $70,000 worth of New York rubbish. So that's design, really turning nothing into something of value. And great design helps capture space in the hearts and minds of your customers, helps to engage your audience emotionally so they change the way that they feel. And of course, as mentioned earlier about farming and branding, and I really believe that farming and branding are very similar processes. So if it's all right with you, I'll share how I came to that conclusion. In about 2007, it was 2007, I was asked by Graham, who was the managing director of a printing company, if I would replace him so he could retire. And of course, that was great. I thought it was brilliant. So I accepted. And I have to say, a mistake I made, and please keep this in mind if you're in that position. I said, well, Graham, of course, you'll be you'll be chairman, won't you? And, oh, yes. Well, I have to say, if you're asked to replace somebody, you need to make sure they're out of the way, because they leave a massive shadow. Now, bearing in mind, Graham started working in this printing company when he was 16 years old. He'd been there over 40 years. Now, I don't know if you remember 2007, 2008, I certainly do very clearly. Financially, the world was in turmoil. Although I have to say, I do have to give you all an apology, because according to Graham, actually, the worldwide recession was my fault. I caused it. I caused the problems that we were facing in our business. And in 2008, I came to the unfortunate conclusion that this business wasn't viable any longer in its current form, and I had to change it. And as managing director, I had that responsibility. So I went to Graham and said, we're going to have to make redundancies. Do you know, the miserable, sorry, I can't use language like that. He said, it's all your fault, you sort it out. He totally failed to step up to his responsibilities as chairman of that business. So I went through a very difficult period. And I have to say, it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my working life, was to identify redundancies within the business. And I have to say, that difficulty is nothing compared to the hardships that people had to face, losing their jobs. I'll never ever take that away from them. So after redundancies, things were levelish, okay, but as you know, the recession continued and it got worse. And by 2010, actually, I was starting to feel pretty unwell, pretty unhealthy. And I can remember one morning in March 2010, and I was feeling pretty nauseous. I was sweating, I had a headache, a bit dizzy, and I actually went to a breakfast meeting. And I knew I couldn't go back to the office. I just couldn't. I couldn't concentrate. And I got home. So I went home, and Kim, my wife, said, "Right, you're going to the doctors." Now, you blokes out there, if you're anything like me, we don't go to the doctors very often, and certainly don't spend much time with them. I was actually with my doctor for 45 minutes, and I have to say, I broke down. I was an absolute wreck. And at the end, the doctor said, "Daniel, I'm really concerned." He said, two things. Firstly, your blood pressure's through the roof. I'm very worried that you might leave here and have a stroke. But secondly, and actually what I'm more worried about, is your mental health state. I mean, you're depressed. And I'm very worried that you might leave here and go and do something very stupid to yourself. And hearing those words just are so difficult to absorb. And actually, I stayed in a depressed state for 3 years or so, on and off. And I don't know if any of you have actually experienced depression, whether firsthand or your closest, those one close to you. And I know that put Kim and my family through a very difficult time. You're probably wondering, what's this got to do with the branding and farming? Well, actually, to come out of depression, I met a wonderful lady called Lindsay Reed, who was a therapist, counsellor, that type of person, and she asked me to come and see her, and she said, share your story with me, Daniel. And I told her what I told you earlier about how I hated school, and all I wanted to do was get on the farm and live that life and work that life and operate big machinery. She said, "Well, Daniel, just tell me a bit more about what you liked about it so much." Talked about how we used to plan the farming. If any of you want to know about crop rotation, better drop me an email, because I'm not sure it's everyone's cup of tea. And then when we got the plan right, we then cultivate. I love cultivating, big tractors. After cultivating, we'd sow. After sowing, we would nurture the crops. And then after nurturing and the right time of year, we would harvest. So Lindsay said, Daniel, become a farmer again. And I said, well, I can't. It just doesn't pay. It doesn't pay. And then we had a light bulb moment together. I can remember actually dancing around the room with Lindsay. It was quite surreal. Because actually what I realized was I was a farmer, but I wasn't farming crops. I'm a farmer of brands. And it was as a result of that, I started to think I can build a process to build brands. And that's when I came up with the 5-stage blueprint to building your most valuable asset. That asset would increase your sales, increase your cash flow, and increase your profit. So just thinking about it, of course, as I said, everything starts with planning in farming and, of course, in brand building. And we talked about what your brand's about. And this is the planning part. So what are your values? What's your story? What's your unique message? What's your customer value proposition? What's your elevator pitch? What's your business name? And how can you monetize your brand? And with that planning completed, we then move into cultivating. So I don't know if any of you are gardeners out there. If you put a fork in the ground and dig up the soil, you get big clods, rough. And that's what we do when we start the design process for your brand. We start with it rough. And then we start to develop it and we refine it so that actually make it right. And once we've got the brand right, we can sow it. We put it out there. And when you sow your brand, you want to make sure you sow it in the right conditions, that it's in the right position, and it's at the right time. Launching your brand on Christmas Day, most people ignore it. Don't do it. So it's all about sowing your brand, making sure it's in the right environment. Now, again, you gardeners out there, think about if you plant a seed and you just leave it to its own devices, it might start to grow and then it will wither and die. And your brand's the same. You've got to nurture your brand to make it grow. You've got to think about your warning tools, social media, use of print, building your networking. And we work with people to work out what your war chest of tools should be. And as you grow your brand, you need to be watching what's going on. What are other people doing? How are people engaging with your brand? We also do some sampling and testing, A and B testing. When you put your message out there, does A work better than, if whichever works best, go with that one and then test that against C. Of course, you need to stay in control of your brand as well. We can't always control everything around us, but you need to control your brand. But it's about taking action. It's about consistency and continuity. Remember, seemingly small, insignificant actions compounded over time is what brings results. And that's the same for building a really powerful, high-value brand. Now, if we've nurtured our brand correctly and everything's gone right, we get to harvest. In farming terms, a very exciting time of year. I just love combine harvesters. Anyway, better move on. So harvesting is about reaping the rewards that your brand brings. And of course, you should celebrate success. Of course, you're entitled to do that. But you still need to take care of what you've got. When we take the grain off the field, it's still got to be looked after. Your brand's the same. You can't just become complacent. And remember, harvest is the end of one cycle and it's the start of the next. So I hope that's a reasonable, convincing explanation of why I believe farming and branding are the same. So when should you launch a brand? Well, you need to launch your brand from the start of your business. You need to be in control from the start. If you've got ambitious goals, remember, we talked about your brand being your foundation, your brand being about what your future world looks like. Think about where you want to be in a couple of years' time. You've got to build your foundations. You've got to take control from the start. Now, not everyone's going to benefit from a brand. What we do is not suitable for everyone. I accept that. Maybe if you're happy to be one of the crowd, maybe a brand's not necessary. If you're happy doing lots of quotes and proposals, well, maybe a brand's not so important. I hate doing quotes and proposals. If you're happy to compete on price, maybe a brand's not so important. You might already have lots of profitable work and you're thinking, well, I don't need a brand. But remember, harvest is the end of one cycle and the beginning of next. You might not worry how you're perceived. Fine, you might not need a brand. And you might just prefer to do marketing. If you remember, I called it manipulation rather than influencing. I'd rather be an influencer than a manipulator personally. But again, that's each to our own. So a 400% return on investment. That's what you should expect minimum from building your brand. If you're an ambitious business owner, this is the sort of thing you need to be getting on with. Think about where you are now and where you want to be. What challenges lie ahead? What hurdles you're going to have to cross? Transform your business from an ordinary to an extraordinary business. It takes your time, it takes your commitment. And remember, if you're not prepared to invest in your business and yourself, why should anybody else? So remember, your brand is your promise. It's about positioning you as someone who's influential. It's about identifying who your audience are, the ambitious, the affluent. It's about bringing more sales. It's about creating a better cash flow to your business, it's about improving your profit. It's about getting a 400% return on investment. Remember, your brand is your most valuable asset. Just have a little think. Some of you might have come across Stephen Covey. He's the author of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he created his time management grid. And if you were to draw a cross, and in the top left box that cross creates, Stephen Covey put important and urgent tasks. Those are the things that we all sort of have to react to and do. Busy, busy, busy. Have a think about, should you be doing all those tasks? Beneath that, we've got not important, but urgent tasks. Yes, that's right. Not important. I think we all probably do some not important stuff at times, and we do it with urgency. And then bottom right-hand box, we've got not important and not urgent. I guess we're all guilty of that at times. Yeah, even me. But then above that, in the top right box, we've got important but not urgent tasks. So this is working on your business, whereas important and urgent is working in your business. And real business growth comes from doing important but not urgent, working on your business. You should be trying to get other people, leverage other people to do the reaction, create a process. Building your brand is important, but often not seen as urgent. If you want your business to grow, you've got to take that action. And how many times have you said, I'll do it after the summer? Oh, I'll do it after Christmas. Oh, I'll do it after Easter. Oh, I'll do it after summer. And suddenly a year's gone. That inaction will stifle your business. Now, just coming to close, Apple, just going back to Apple, from what I can gather, in June 2016, the value of Apple's tangible assets per share was $21.84. Their shares were trading at $695 each. So what's the difference between the tangible asset value and the value of the business? Have a think. It's their customers, their data, their brand, the goodwill. Your business, your biggest asset, your asset with the most value is not usually your tangible assets. It's those intangibles which are hard to measure, but they are so essential to build your business. So build your most valuable asset. Make sure you get a great return on investment. Now, next time I come and talk, I talk to you, we'll explore a little bit more about how we can build our tool, our war chest, to actually deliver our brand to our audience. Those are the day-to-day activities, the seemingly small and significant actions compounded over time that brings results. So that brings me to an end. My name's Daniel Bennett, and again, if you want to contact me or get in touch with me, you can find my personal website at daniel-bennett.uk. And that brings me to an end. So you've been a truly wonderful audience. I've been Daniel Bennett. It's time for me to say goodbye, and until next time. So goodbye, and until next time.